I want you to think back over, like, the last decade or so and try to pinpoint the loudest, maybe the most aggressive narrative in the entire crypto space.
Oh, there are definitely a few contenders for that one.
Yeah, right. But if you've been paying attention, you know the exact one I mean. It's this persistent, this idea that blockchain was basically a hostile takeover.
Or the great financial decoupling.
Exactly. We were told over and over that this technology was going to just systematically dismantle, obliterate, and entirely replace the traditional banking system.
Yeah, the idea was that everyone would eventually, become their own bank.
Yeah.
Just completely bypassing all the legacy institutions.
Right. The imagery was always so combative. People talked about it like it was this digital siege on Wall Street.
Totally.
But today, we're looking at a stack of sources. We've got internal memos, strategic integration documents, and direct statements from Marshall Hayner. He's the CEO of Metallicus. And these sources suggest that the hostile takeover narrative was completely misinterpreting what this technology actually is. So our mission for this deep dive is to really look at the evidence showing that blockchain isn't like an asteroid designed to wipe out the banking dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's not a weapon at all.
No, it's actually a desperately needed, massive software upgrade for them.
What's fascinating here is the ideological pivot. I mean, we are really watching the industry mature out of this disruption mindset and into an integration mindset.
Makes sense. I mean, you kind of have to, right?
Exactly. The original cypherpunk ethos was fantastic for bootstrapping the tech, proving that decentralized consensus actually works.
Right.
But as a go-to-market strategy for 8 billion people, declaring war on the global financial system was just a massive miscalculation.
Because it created these two completely separate, fragmented worlds. You had the legacy system where everyone's actual livelihood sits.
Right, where they pay their rent.
Yeah. And then you had this parallel, highly technical crypto ecosystem. And bridging the two was always an absolute nightmare.
A nightmare that everyday consumers simply won't navigate. I mean, they just won't. The broader crypto industry really struggled with mainstream adoption because they expected the average person to abandon the regulatory safety of their bank.
Right, just to participate in this wild new paradigm.
Exactly. But Hayner's thesis, which is really driving the Metallicus strategy, flips that entirely. The source text quotes him explicitly saying, if you want real adoption, you don't fight the system. You integrate with it.
You bring the blockchain to them.
Exactly. You bring the speed and the transparency of the blockchain directly into the banking apps that people already trust.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the sources lean heavily on this concept of building the rails. Hayner actually states the winners won't be the apps, the winners will be the rails.
Right.
And to me, that sounds a lot like the early days of the internet. Back in the late 90s, all the hype was about these flashy consumer-facing .coms, right?
Well, yeah, pets.com and all that.
Exactly. But the most valuable, enduring infrastructure turned out to be the literally invisible stuff.
Right.
The TCP/IP protocols, the fiber optic networks.
The literal pathways routing the data.
Right. The rails.
And that analogy maps perfectly onto finance. Right now, the rails moving global capital are systems like ACH, SWIFT, wire transfers.
Which are ancient.
Yeah, they're essentially the financial equivalent of the Postal Service. Like, if you send money via SWIFT, the transaction is basically a registered letter.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It has to be physically handed off to multiple correspondent banks, each one verifying the ledger, taking a fee, delaying the process. It's batch processed, usually overnight or over several days.
Well, the rest of the internet operates in real time.
Precisely the problem. You can stream a 4K movie from across the globe instantly, right?
Right.
But moving $1,000 to London takes 3 business days. Hayner is arguing that building some flashy new decentralized finance app on top of those legacy rails is just pointless. The underlying plumbing is still broken.
So you have to rip out the plumbing.
Well, sort of. The institutions that win the next decade won't be the ones building the best apps. They'll be the ones laying down the new blockchain rails, the financial fiber optics, and installing them underneath the existing banking framework.
But wait, if you're a legacy bank running on decades-old mainframe architecture, integrating a blockchain sounds incredibly complex.
It usually is.
Which means we really need to look under the hood at what Metallicus is actually offering here. Because they don't frame their tech as a standard product suite. The documents call it a banking operating system.
Yeah, and calling it an operating system is a very deliberate choice of words.
How so?
Well, an OS is the foundational layer, right?
Yeah.
It manages the hardware and the software resources. It runs quietly in the background so applications can actually function.
Got it. And the sources break this OS down into 3 core components. First, there's the WebAuth Wallet. Second, metal pay. And third, the metal blockchain itself.
Right.
I really want to dig into the mechanics of each of these, starting with WebAuth, because this seems to solve what I think is the biggest user experience hurdle in all of crypto, which is the private key.
Oh, absolutely. The private key, or the seed phrase, is basically the single point of failure that keeps institutional money and retail users completely on the sidelines.
Because if you lose it, you're done.
Right. If you lose your seed phrase, your money is gone forever. No bank can operate with that level of catastrophic user risk. They just can't.
So how does WebAuth bypass that without compromising the actual, cryptographic security of the blockchain? The sources say it uses biometric identity, but how does my face or my fingerprint actually sign a transaction on a decentralized ledger?
So it leverages the WebAuth standard. It utilizes the secure enclave that's already built right into your smartphone or your laptop.
Okay.
So when you use Face ID or Touch ID, you aren't just unlocking an app. The secure enclave on your device generates a unique cryptographic proof signature that authorizes the transaction on the Metal blockchain.
Wait, really? So it binds my actual identity to the crypto identity?
Exactly. It binds your verified biological identity to your cryptographic identity.
Okay.
The bank gets the rock-solid security of a blockchain transaction, but the user gets the frictionless experience of literally just looking at their phone.
No passwords, no seed phrases to write on a piece of paper and lose.
None of it.
That fundamentally changes the whole onboarding process. So if WebAuth solves the identity and the security side of things, where does Metal Pay fit into this whole operating system?
So Metal Pay basically functions as the bridge. It's the translation layer between fiat and digital assets.
Because people still use normal money.
Exactly. Even if a bank upgrades its rails, its customers still operate primarily in fiat. They get paid in fiat, they pay their taxes in fiat.
Right.
So MetalPay provides the API architecture that allows a bank to seamlessly convert a customer's fiat deposits into digital assets like stablecoins.
Okay.
Then it routes them across the blockchain and converts them back to fiat on the receiving end. And all of this happens completely in the background.
Which brings us to the third component, right? The Metal blockchain itself. But I have to ask, why this specific blockchain? There are, hundreds of networks out there right now?
There are. But the Metal blockchain is designed specifically for high-performance, compliant execution.
Compliant being the key word there.
Exactly. Legacy blockchains often struggle with network congestion and really high gas fees because every transaction is competing for the exact same block space.
Right, it gets jammed up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Metal architecture is built to support subnets. This allows banks to essentially spin up their own dedicated, high-throughput environments that settle instantly.
Oh, so they aren't fighting with public traffic.
Exactly. They don't compete with public network traffic. It upgrades that postal service model we talked about earlier into like an instant email protocol for value transfer.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Yeah.
We're talking about tying biometric identity directly to transactions. We're integrating with legacy banking apps, routing everything through regulated fiat gateways.
Yeah.
And the sources explicitly state that Metallicus is, quote, compliance first. Hayner even claims compliance isn't a barrier, it's the foundation.
He does.
Doesn't that completely contradict the whole foundational cypherpunk ethos? The whole anonymous permissionless finance thing?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that perceived contradiction is actually the very thing unlocking institutional capital.
Really?
Yeah. Permissionless, pseudonymous networks are incredible for open source experimentation. They really are. But they're absolutely toxic for a highly regulated bank.
Because of the laws they have to follow.
Exactly. A financial institution operates under strict anti-money laundering regulations. If a bank cannot cryptographically verify the identity of the sender and the receiver, they legally cannot process the transaction. Full stop.
So anonymity is actually like a massive bottleneck for scale.
It's an impenetrable wall. When Hayner says compliance is the foundation, he's pointing out a hard reality. Trillions of dollars in global capital will never move on to a system that obfuscates identity.
It's just too risky for them.
Right. By making the operating system identity native through WebAuth, Metallicus isn't betraying the technology, they are domesticating it.
Domesticating it. I like that.
Yeah. They are providing the mathematical certainty of the blockchain, but wrapped in the regulatory compliance that institutions require to operate legally.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's not an external app trying to siphon users away from the bank. It's an engine designed to be dropped directly into the bank's existing chassis.
Precisely.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources don't just outline this philosophy, right? They detail how it's currently being deployed through some massive strategic partnerships.
Real-world applications.
Exactly, the blueprint in action. And the first one that really stands out to me is the integration with Temenos.
Oh yeah, Temenos. For listeners who might be outside of enterprise fintech, Temenos is an absolute titan.
Right.
It is one of the world's largest core banking platforms. Thousands of financial institutions globally rely on Temenos for their digital plumbing.
Everything from managing accounts to processing loans.
Everything.
And according to the documents, Metallicus is now officially integrated into the Temenos exchange. But I want to understand the actual mechanics here. If I'm a local credit union and I'm running on Temenos, how does this integration actually work on a technical level? Do they have to go out and hire a whole team of Solidity developers to spin up blockchain nodes?
Not at all. And that's really the genius of the API-first approach. Banks have these massive, deeply siloed legacy databases.
Yeah.
Traditionally, getting that database to communicate with a decentralized ledger would require rebuilding the bank's IT infrastructure from scratch. Nobody wants to do that.
That sounds incredibly expensive.
It is. But by integrating through the Temenos exchange, Metallicus provides a simple plug-and-play API. The bank's existing Temenos software basically just calls the MetalPay API.
Okay, so they just talk to each other.
Right. The API translates the bank's ledger update into a blockchain transaction, executes it instantly on the Metal blockchain, and then reports the state change back to the bank's database.
So the bank's IT department just treats it like any other standard software module.
Exactly. It reduces the friction of adoption to almost zero. They get all the benefits of decentralized settlement without having to fundamentally alter their core banking software.
Or hire specialized blockchain engineers.
Exactly.
That's huge. And that leads directly to another integration detailed in the sources, which tackles the security side of this upgrade, Jack Henry.
Another absolute giant in the financial tech space.
Yeah, they provide technology solutions to thousands of regional banks and credit unions, and the documents specifically highlight Jack Henry in the context of advanced fraud detection.
This is such a critical piece of the puzzle.
Why is that?
Because when you upgrade from ACH, where you have days to reverse a fraudulent transaction, to an instant immutable blockchain settlement, your fraud detection paradigm has to change completely.
Oh, because once it's on-chain, it's permanent.
Exactly. Once a transaction is on-chain, it's final. You can't just call customer service to roll it back.
So how on earth do you manage fraud in an immutable system?
You have to catch it before the block is signed.
Okay.
So the integration with Jack Henry allows the banking operating system to run institutional-grade, real-time behavioral analytics and fraud checks in the milliseconds between the user authorizing the transaction with their biometric WebAuth identity and the transaction actually being broadcast to the Metal blockchain.
Milliseconds. That's incredible.
Yeah, if the Jack Henry algorithms flag an anomaly, say a sudden massive transfer to a high-risk jurisdiction that doesn't match the user's historical behavior, the API just halts the process before it ever hits the chain.
Wow. So it brings traditional heuristic fraud monitoring right into the Web3 settlement layer?
Precisely.
We're really seeing the complete blending of the two worlds. The banks keep their compliance, they keep their fraud models, but they gain all that cryptographic speed.
Best of both worlds.
And the sources point to one more partnership that takes this blending a step further, pushing beyond just currency and into actual assets. They mentioned tokenization partnerships with a platform called Rarible.
Rarible is fascinating here, because most people associate them purely with digital art and NFTs.
Yeah, that was definitely my first thought. Like, why is a banking operating system integrating with an NFT marketplace?
Because the underlying technology of an NFT, a non-fungible token, is really just a unique digital container. Historically, yeah, we put JPEGs in those containers.
Right.
But Metallicus is leveraging Rarible's infrastructure to bring tokenized real-world assets, or RWAs, into mainstream finance.
So what does that actually mean?
We are talking about taking a physical asset like a piece of commercial real estate, a treasury bond, maybe a stake in a private equity fund, and representing its ownership rights as a token on the Metal blockchain.
Okay, so how does that work in practice for a bank? Let's say I own a tokenized commercial property. How does my bank interact with that via Rarible?
So the physical deed to that property sits in a legal regulated trust.
Yep.
But the ownership of that trust is represented by a token on the chain.
Okay,
Through this banking operating system, Your local bank can custody that token for you, just like they custody your cash.
Oh, wow.
And because they are tapped into Rarible's protocol through the Metallicus API, they can instantly verify the authenticity, the provenance, and the current valuation of that tokenized asset.
Which means the bank could suddenly treat that tokenized building as, like, liquid collateral.
That's the real breakthrough. If your bank can instantly verify your tokenized asset on the Metal blockchain, they could programmatically issue you a line of credit against it in stablecoins.
Instantly?
Yes. Settling the entire loan agreement via smart contract in seconds. No 30-day underwriting process. No manual title searches.
That's insane.
The Rarible integration literally turns illiquid real-world value into hyper-liquid programmable collateral.
So what does this all mean? Putting all of this together, Temenos for core banking, Jack Henry for pre-chain fraud detection, Rarible for tokenized assets, all of it tied together by biometric identity on the Metal blockchain. What does this actually look like for you, the listener? Let's make the end game incredibly concrete.
Well, the end game outlined in these sources is a financial experience where all of this complexity is completely abstracted away.
Hidden from view.
Right. Imagine logging into your normal checking account app.
Yeah.
You authenticate with your fingerprint. Behind the scenes, WebAuth verifies your identity cryptographically. You decide to send $1,000 to a vendor overseas.
Which normally is a massive headache involving wire fees and routing numbers and waiting.
Right. But in this upgraded system, the bank's Temenos software just tings the Metal Pay API. Your fiat is instantly converted into a compliant stablecoin.
Okay.
It's routed across the high-speed Metal blockchain, converted back into local fiat on the recipient's end, and settled in their account in milliseconds.
And the Jack Henry integration monitored the whole thing for fraud in real time.
Exactly.
And I, as the user, didn't do anything different. I didn't open a separate wallet. I didn't calculate gas fees. I didn't deal with a crypto exchange at all.
You just click send. Which brings us to perhaps the most revealing quote in the entire stack of documents from Marshall Hayner. He says, "We're not building for crypto users. We're building for everyone who uses money."
The invisible blockchain.
That is the ultimate metric for success. You don't need to understand how the SMTP protocol routes data packets just to send an email, right?
Right.
You don't need to understand the physics of fiber optics to stream audio.
Right.
Adoption happens at scale when a technology becomes entirely invisible to the end user. The blockchain will simply be the silent, highly efficient rails making your money move faster and safer.
We started this deep dive talking about that loud early narrative, the digital asteroid coming to wipe out Wall Street.
Right.
But analyzing these integration documents and seeing how deep Metallicus is embedding into the traditional stack, the picture changes completely. We aren't looking at the destruction of banks. We're looking at the most significant architectural upgrade to the financial system in half a century.
An upgrade that basically bridges the trust and regulatory compliance of traditional banking with the mathematical certainty and speed of decentralized networks.
Exactly. And the source material ends with a stark warning from Hayner, and I think it frames the stakes perfectly. He says, banking is going on-chain, and the institutions that move first will define the next financial era.
Yeah, the banks that refuse to adopt these new rails aren't going to be destroyed by crypto. They're going to be outcompeted by other banks that can settle transactions in milliseconds instead of days.
It's adapt or become obsolete.
This raises an important question, though, and it's something to mull over long after this deep dive ends. We've established that the goal of this banking operating system is to make the blockchain invisible, acting as the silent rails that allow assets to move seamlessly.
The hyper-liquidity of everything.
Yes. So imagine a near future where every single asset you own, the fiat currency in your checking account, the tokenized equity in your home via a Rarible integration, maybe a fraction of a treasury bond all exist on these same unified rails.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
If the friction of exchange drops to absolutely zero and your bank app allows you to instantly pay for a cup of coffee using a microscopic fraction of your tokenized real estate,
Oh, wow.
what happens to our traditional concept of money?
That completely blurs the line between currency and property.
Exactly. If every asset is instantly verifiable, universally accepted, and instantly spendable across these new rails, The distinction between a dollar and an investment asset just dissolves.
Right.
How does that hyper-liquidity change the way you value what you own when literally everything in your portfolio becomes liquid cash at the tap of a biometric scan?
That is a profound thought to leave on. The asteroid wasn't a weapon, it was an infrastructural seed. And the financial dinosaurs aren't going extinct. They're just evolving into something vastly more powerful.